Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future content. Email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com to have your story featured on an upcoming video. I have been receiving very few stories as of late, my friends. If you want our channel to continue to grow the way it has, I need your stories. Don't be afraid. No story is too short or too long. Just send it my way. Today's video features truly horrifying pilot experience stories. Whether you're flying the high skies alone or in a plane with 200 other passengers, no one's safe. Sit back, relax, enjoy. Number 1. I'm a career airline pilot in the United States. The creepiest thing that has ever happened to me was back when I was an instructor in Florida, and I was giving one of my students his first ever actual IMC flights in an SR-20. We were flying out of Sanford, Florida, and the weather was pretty crappy for anyone not IFR rated, or someone who is allowed to fly by sole reference to the instruments inside of clouds. It was nighttime and we were coming back from shooting an approach into Orlando Executive Airport when over the emergency guard frequency of 121.5, we heard someone eerily say, "Hello?" again and again. I tried to talk to the voice but got no response. It turns out that it was a girl who had stolen a plane from a local flight school she was training at and wasn't allowed to be flying it, and ended up crashing and killing herself that night. There's an ATC clip of it that I'll try to post on here if I can find it. Number 2. The plane I flew, the SAAB 340, was a 34-seat turboprop commuter. While every other plane maker was using Pratt & Whitney engines, SAAB decided to use GE helicopter engines, the same engines that power the Black Hawk. These engines had a feature called a rollback. If you were flying in slushy conditions a little below freezing, say -2 Celsius, they had a habit of occasionally shutting down. It was just for a second, and they would immediately relight, but it would make a loud bang and flash, give a little kick and light up some indications in the cockpit. More interesting was the static in St. Elmo's fire. The plane got a little odd around all that electricity in the storms. First, you have to have a radar to fly an airliner near thunderstorms. Ours worked pretty well, that is until you got it covered with ice, and there's lots of ice in thunderstorms. The static on the windshield was pretty cool. It looks like a plasma ball that we've all seen. Not too crazy. People call that St. Elmo's fire, but it's not. I've had real St. Elmo's fire on the SAAB once that was kind of spooky. We were maybe 10 minutes from landing, and we had been dodging storms all night. We were coming into clear near the airport, and had one last cloud to go through. As we entered the last cloud, the noise of the airplane lit up like Rudolph's nose, but it was a hard magenta like you see in the Northern Lights somewhere. It looked like we had a magenta spotlight shining out of our nose. It lit up the cloud in front of us quite a bit, and then it was gone. I never saw that before, and I've never seen it again. Number 3. I flew at a shoddy company in the boonies of Saskatchewan a while back. I flew a dead body in a body bag by myself at night in Chieftain. The dead guy groaned and jerked pretty hard about 10 minutes into the flight. Had it Herc strapped down, so I don't know how much of it would have moved if not restrained. I just muttered under my breath and looked over my shoulder for the rest of the flight. I'm pretty sure it was gases inside the corpse, brought on by pressure change from ground to 3,000 feet. Number 4. My father was approaching a small airfield where he was going to land. He was flying a turbo Trush and was just beginning his approach. The tower called him and they said he had a strange radar echo by the end of the runway, and asked him if he could check it out. As he approached, he saw a gray sphere just hanging there, a few hundred meters off the ground. Now markings, no visible features, no activity on the ground below. He moved closer to see it better, when it suddenly takes off straight up. tries to give chase. The Turbo Thrush is a nimble aircraft, and with little fuel and no payload, it will climb fast, really fast, but he couldn't match its rate of climb by far. He was completely sure it wasn't a balloon. He's done a lot of balloon hunting at air shows. It was too big. The movement wasn't like a balloon. It went against the wind and climbed way too fast. The tower saw it climb as well, and while I don't remember any numbers, the rate of climb was akin to a modern jet fighter. The orb had no features and was difficult to estimate the size, but Dad guessed at least 10 to 15 meters in diameter. Neither he nor I would call it a UFO, unless you mean it in the strictest sense, as it clearly was unidentified flying and an object, but he has no idea what it was. Number 5. December 1993. I was in the right seat of a Cessna Centurion, my dad in the left seat. We were on a short final into Orange County John Wayne Airport, and were landing not long after a 757. Suddenly, at about 200 feet, we hit wake turbulence from the 757, and the Centurion rolled 60 degrees to the right. Quick reflexes corrected the roll, and we landed without incident, other than the requisite change of undershorts. A few days later, a jet carrying the president of In-N-Out Burger was in exactly the same place in the same situation following a 757, got caught in the wake turbulence, and crashed into an intersection short of the airport, killing all aboard. The incident and later crash served to put a huge exclamation point on the caution, wake turbulence warnings, heard over the radio. Number 6. This happened many, many years ago when I was a student pilot. I was 14 at the time. I had about 15 hours done and getting close to soloing for the first time, but still had a few hours and more landings to practice. I was doing some basics and getting ready to come back with my instructor to practice some touch and goes for a while. Coming back through, we had to pass through DTW's Bravo airspace, which means need permission to go through it. A few minutes before I was about to call for permission, my instructor got very quiet. I looked over at him and he looked very bad. I thought he was going to puke, so looking for a bag, but then I noticed he wasn't breathing. I figure out where I am and I call DTW approach, declare an emergency and that my instructor wasn't breathing. I also told them I am a student and never landed on my own before, and never in a large airport. Detroit Approach was amazing at helping me. They gave me an option for DTW or Willow, but Willow would have added a good 5 to 10 minutes since I was coming in from the southeast. I opted for DTW, and they were great at giving me vectors while also getting the big jets out of the way. I remember hearing them tell several planes to go around and several more into a hold. Anyway, I did my approach and made the most butter-smooth landing I have ever made in my life, even till this day. The ambulance was right there on the taxi waiting for me. Turns out my instructor, who was only 25, had just had a heart attack. He ended up being all right. All in all, from first call to him in the ambulance was less than 10 minutes, thanks to ATC and DTW Tower. Number 6. I took my brother and 2 cousins up for a short sightseeing flight one morning in a Cessna 172. I knew there was some weather coming in, so I wanted to get it over with quickly. About 20 minutes in, I noticed the clouds getting worse, then some lightning off in the distance. Definitely time to head back. Heading back, I radioed my intentions. Uncontrolled airport but with an FBO, and someone radioed back with the current winds. It didn't compute what they said, and in retrospect, I should have asked for clarification. I get back to the airport, and as I'm on my final, I realize just how bad the wind is. Having a hard time keeping on centerline, and eventually going around on the first try. By now I'm starting to sweat bullets and planning on rerouting if the next attempt doesn't go well. I make sure to turn the intercom off so my cousins in the back can't hear how panicked I'm becoming, though I did keep my cool through the whole thing. On second attempt, I've got the rudder pegged to the left and managed to get the wheels on the ground safely. I taxi to park, shut down, jump out, and start shaking with adrenaline, and let out a huge sigh of relief. My cousins had no idea what just happened. It was just an exciting flight to them. My brother kind of knew what was going on, and I let him in on what I was thinking after. Apparently, I had an audience of guys from the FBO watching me as well, probably yelling at me to go somewhere else. I'm honestly surprised sometimes I managed that landing with no incidents, especially since that was basically my first crosswind landing. Number 7. I was flying a Cessna 172 to Henderson, Nevada a few years back. Flying out of the desert maybe an hour south of Henderson at 7,500 feet with 2 instructors on board. One was mine because I was a student pilot at the time. We were dropping the other off in Nevada. Suddenly we hear a gigantic bang. We all look around very confused and glance at the instruments as well as the outside surfaces of the plane. Nothing seemed to be amiss. We figured it might be a bird strike on the landing gear or something. We landed at Henderson and jumped out, finding that one of the 2 exhaust pipes below the engine had fallen off mid-flight. The bang was likely the pipe hitting the gear or the bottom of the cowling. This spooked us all because those exhaust gases could have very easily leaked into the cabin and incapacitated all of us. The exhaust pipe had broken off well into cowling, so we decided to call for someone else to come get my instructor and I because we weren't thrilled with the idea of having carbon monoxide poisoning. If anyone happens to find a Cessna 172 exhaust pipe in the desert south of Henderson, tell it I said hi. Number 8. The son of a pilot who flew for Eastern Airlines recounted a time when his father's plane was headed down the runway. The plane was approaching takeoff speed, only to find that another commercial jet had started to taxi down the same runway. Stopping the plane and aborting takeoff wasn't an option since the plane was going too fast. So instead the pilot pulled up early, missing the other taxiing plane by mere feet. According to the Sun, only the passengers on the taxiing plane saw what had happened. The passengers on the plane taking off remained oblivious. One commercial pilot was about to start a descent when his ears and the rest of the flight crews started to pop a lot. That's when he realized that the cabin was rapidly losing pressure thanks to a failing cabin pressure control channel. According to this pilot, if an airplane loses pressurization while it's in the air, pilots only have about 30 seconds of useful consciousness, i.e., the amount of time they can perform their flying duties efficiently in an environment of inadequate oxygen supply. Luckily, pressure controls have 2 channels, meaning that if one channel fails, the control can switch to the other channel. That's exactly what the pilot did, and the flight continued safely from there. But the dropping pressure caused quite a scare. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like on the video, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. If I don't start getting more stories, guys, I won't be able to make videos. So please, email me your stories now. There doesn't have to be any particular theme in the stories, anything that was scary or terrifying. Till we meet again, stay sinful.